Om Shanti. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Welcome to another Yoga Small Talk, and we continue with 7 minutes Bhagavad Gita a day. We are reading from chapter 6, the Yoga of Meditation, and we have reached verse 24. Abandoning without reserve all desires born of sankalpa, thought and imagination, and completely restraining the whole group of senses by the mind from all sides. That's 24. 25. Little by little, let him attain to quietude by the intellect held firmly. Having made the mind establish itself in the self, let him not think of anything. So we see here a process that starts with abandoning the desires that are born of the thoughts and gradually reaching the mind that is established in the self. Now, to understand verse 24, especially the words abandoning without reserve all desires, let us look back a little bit to chapter 2. In chapter 2, verse 59, Lord Krishna tells us the objects of the senses turn away from the abstinent man, leaving the longing behind. But his longing also turns away on seeing the Supreme. So why is Lord Krishna telling us abandoning without reserve? Because we have reservations. As we said in the previous teachings, many of us, our default mode is going after the sense objects. This is what we know, this is where we think we'll get our happiness, and this is what we do. But then some spiritual awakening comes, and I start realizing that, okay, I'm getting the objects of the senses, but I'm not getting the joy, the calmness, the serenity that I was hoping to get from those objects. Yes, my desire is fulfilled, but it's not giving me what I wanted to get. So we get this spiritual awakening and we say, okay, maybe I should do something else. We go to a spiritual teacher, and the spiritual teacher tells us you should renounce the objects of the senses. As is written here, we should renounce the objects of the senses. So what do? As it is described in chapter 2, the objects of the senses turn away from the abstinent man. So we start developing some spiritual wisdom and we turn away from the objects of the senses. Very good. But what happens? Leaving the longing behind. So the objects, we say, okay, maybe I don't need so many clothes, maybe I don't need fancy food, maybe I don't need a house with 6 rooms for 2 people, maybe I don't need this, maybe I don't need that. So we start simplifying our material existence. We start abstaining, we start renouncing. But this is not an easy process at all. For those of us who have been on a diet, we know exactly what is meant here. It's like we're putting the senses on this kind of diet. And yes, we are able for some time not to eat as much as we did, or maybe to let go of foods that are not so good for us or not necessary for our well-being. But the longing is there, the desire is there. And as long as it is there, we are operating against a lot of friction. We are constantly pushing away things. And this is very difficult. So first thing we are told, you need to be in proper company. Here you start understanding why satsanga is so important. We need to have reinforcements as we go through this process. We need a lot of support to keep our faith together, to keep what was described in verse 23 so beautifully, with determination and undesponding mind, to keep us determined, to keep us from getting despondent. It is very, very difficult because we walk against friction. And as we said in the previous study, others who are not renouncing sometimes may look as if they are happier, as if they are winning the game. And we are abandoning externally. But the longing is left behind. And Swami Shivananda tells us the mind is so diplomatic that it keeps certain desires for its secret gratification. Even after we have reached the state where we say, okay, we let go of a lot of material things, we are still left with some secret desires that the diplomatic mind kept for itself. For instance, the desire for name and fame, very beautifully described in the Raja Yoga Sutras. All of a sudden we gain some powers and we want to show off. We want everybody to know how powerful we are. We get into a spiritual institution and we want to be the head of this institution. Why? Because the diplomatic mind said, okay, we'll have less clothes, maybe we'll not have a car, but name and fame, yeah, this we need. So, leaving the longing behind and the abandonment, the real abandonment, is without reserve. And how do we reach that? We will discuss in the next video. So, please join us. Om Shanti.